fucking Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. Like, it's...
I know. It's ridiculous. Just seeing the Browns with better odds, I was like, well, shit is changing.
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah. So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh. I'm here with my good friend, Vinny Gonzalez. Vinny, what's going on, dude? We're here to talk about your team tonight.
Yes, we're going to tackle the AFC North with my personal favorite, the Bengals. So that's always depressing and very exciting for me. I can't wait to get into it because it's a crazy division. A lot of it's pretty close, and the Browns are looking pretty good. So I'm very eager to talk about everything that's going on in this division because I love it.
Yeah. This is going to be pretty fun. You're right. It is a very close division. A couple teams are. I mean, there's a lot of changes, I guess, which we've been kind of emphasizing all the way through. But tonight, or in this episode, rather, we are going to discuss the Bengals and the Steelers. And then in part 2 of the AFC North, we're gonna hit you with the Browns and the Ravens. So both episodes should be pretty solid. I'm gonna warn you or let you know, I guess, because I'm not sure exactly when these are coming out. We're recording them on the 24th. So keep that in mind, I guess, in case we say anything that sounds stupid in a couple of days. I know we're also getting the NFC East done this week, so I don't know the exact order that these will be released in. But again, we're recording this on July 24th, and we're ready to rock. But Vinny, before we do get into that, we do have to give you guys a special message courtesy of Auction Draft. Auction Draft is the best site for running your fantasy football auction league in 2018, and you can sign up now and get on the list for launch by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft. The promo code LTFF when you go to their website is going to get you 50% off your league. So make sure to enter that in. That is all capitals, LTFF. Definitely check that out, guys. We'll be getting an auction draft going within the next couple weeks here, probably as we wrap up division previews. So keep an eye out for that as well. We also got to mention that we're in the running for a podcast award, courtesy of podcastawards.com. So go to podcastawards.com. You can register for free, and you can vote for us in the sports category. Vinny, let's get right the fuck into the Bengals here. I'm ready to rock. So I guess overall, let's talk about just some of the big picture changes. So it's year 2 for the Bengals under Bill Lazor. I guess year 1.5, right? Under Bill Lazor, given that they fired Ken Zampese as their offensive coordinator halfway through the year. So talk to me a little bit about whether you think the offense is going to change this year, or whether you think they're going to stick to that sort of conservative Marvin Lewis style offense.
Well, they pretty much got a full year under Lazor because remember the Bengals' awful 0-2 start, getting shut out 2 games in a row, and then they brought in Lazor against the Packers for week 3, and then he threw the ball to AJ Green 20 plus times, and I'm like, yeah, this will work. So it was pretty much a full year, and I liked what I saw. For the most part, they tried to get Mixon involved. Gio was doing his thing. Hill was irrelevant. So it's kind of, I think, going to be more of the same of what we saw, just with more stability for the offensive line. They bring in Billy Price. They drafted the center out of Ohio State in the first round. So that is fantastic for them. And they also traded for Cordy Glenn from the Bills, which shores up the left tackle spot. And I was so excited about that in the offseason. It was the saddest moment of my life. The Bengals needed a line change so bad, and it was just such a good move in the offseason, which the Bengals do not do. So I'm so happy about that. So the line should be a little bit, the line should be a little better, more stable because they were god awful last year. But as bad as they were, they did finish 7-9 and were still kind of relevant in the playoff hunt in the terrible AFC, which was, not saying a lot, but to be in the playoff race, still into December was pretty amazing for how they looked. So they're kind of always hanging around, but I seem to overestimate them most years. So
yeah,
there's always that.
Yeah, it's also worth noting on the offensive line, they brought in Frank Pollock, who was the Cowboys offensive line coach the past 2 years. Their previous offensive line coach, I forget the guy's name, but he had been there like 23 seasons or some shit like that. So a little bit of fresh blood there with the offensive line coaching staff. Like you said, they brought in those two offensive linemen. Last year, I was like really high on the Bengals offense. And like kind of had this creeping suspicion that if the offensive line was bad, it was going to cause all my predictions to be wrong, and they were bad and all my predictions were wrong. So I'm kind of pretty high on them this year because I think the offensive line is going to be better. Let's get right into Andy Dalton, though, at the quarterback position. He's going undrafted. Do you think that's correct?
Yes. I think if anything happens and the Bengals start to do well and Andy Dalton starts to, every time they've had a solid line, he's always been a solid player, and I think he gets a lot of shit that he doesn't deserve because I think Dalton's a great quarterback. But when the line is shored up, he is a more than capable quarterback and should be a shoe-in probably for 4,000 yards. But I would not draft him, and I think it's something that like prove it to me and then could be that pickup that he was for most people in 2015 when he had that great year. So I think it'll be something like that. Definitely don't draft him right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's in the streamer conversation, like pretty much all the quarterbacks from like, rank 13 to basically all the other ones in the league. It is interesting that they play the Colts week 1, and we know the Colts are a terrible team with a terrible defense. But I mean, maybe that's probably not like unless if you're in a 2 quarterback league, I think you can start in week 1 like no problem, or like a super flex league. Just because it's a great matchup week 1. But if you're in a regular league, don't worry about drafting him. Keep an eye out for him on those good matchups if he does play well.
Another wild thing about that is they play the last preseason game is Colts at Bengals, and then they go play the Colts week 1.
That's really weird.
It's the weirdest thing I've seen.
Like a scheduling fuck up.
Yes, I think it was 100%. They just kind of left it.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, we already made the rest of it, I guess.
Leave it.
Yeah, so that's Dalton. Let's move on to the running back position, where there's a bit of intrigue, and we've got Joe Mixon being drafted high again after a disappointing overall year, but a pretty good second half of the year last year. So Mixon going off the board, first pick in the 3rd round. That's running back 14. Again, all our ADPs tonight are from Fantasy Football Calculators, 12-team PPR ADP. Gio Bernard is also still there. He's going off the board, 7th pick in the 11th round. That's running back 49. And then it's worth noting that they drafted a running back, Mark Walton, out of Miami in the 4th round, which is pretty high for a running back when you have Mixon and Bernard there. And Walton kind of profiles as a scat back, a Geo type back as well behind there. So that's a little bit interesting, but nothing too much to worry about, I don't think. What are your opinions on Mixon and Geo? And then do you have any thoughts on Walton as well?
You took the words right out of my mouth for Mark Walton. I just thought that was kind of like a Geo insurance, just because Geo missed some time with the ACL 2 years ago, and kind of got back to form last year. So I think that's just so they have that change of pace back in case anything were to happen to Geo. So I don't think anyone has to worry about his workload getting involved or cutting into Mixon or Geo's workload for that matter. I think Geo's going too high. It's kind of where he went as a rookie. Which
you mean Mixon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last year, he was kind of going in like the same zone, and he underperformed getting taken there. And I think he'll probably have the same sort of opportunities here because the 1-2 punch is probably going to be in effect again with Geo and Mixon sharing time, and it could probably get a little frustrating. I don't think he's going to be a lead back like people expect him to be, but he's multi-talented. He can catch out of the backfield and all that. It's just I don't know if his ceiling is going to be realized this season or anything like that. I think Gio is very talented and the Bengals love to use him, and it's just going to be frustrating for fantasy purposes. But that's kind of why I'm liking Gio super late. I think you just take Gio and he can be a bye-week flex guy for you probably for the entire year. One of the more frustrating things to do as well, but going that late, it's something cool, especially in the running back position. But for Mixon, I don't think I'll be owning him. It just seems too high. I don't know. How are you feeling about Mixon?
So I think you're I think the question here really comes down to what this split is going to be, because I agree with you that Mixon, I think, was productive in the pass game last year, and I think he can be used in the pass game. I think if they wanted him to be a guy who gets 70-80% of the running back touches, like, he totally could be. But do you think this is a 50-50 split? Do you think it's 60-40? Is it like 66-33? Like, I don't know, because I think if we're looking at like somewhere around like 66-33, or, you know, like 65% of these running back touches are going to Mixon, I think he's worth it at that price. But I don't know if that's really the case, or whether it's closer to 50-50.
I would say 60-40. So
Okay.
Mixon will start, get his thing going, and you know, he'll see his opportunities. But what's strange about the Bengals is they use Gio in the red zone an awful lot, and I think that has a lot to do with how they scheme games. And it's weird because they run counters and draws and screens with Gio down there, so it could take away scoring opportunities for Mixon. Like, he's not going to be the goal line back, and they don't really have one, so they might be using Gio down there as a gadget kind of deal. But not to say that Mixon won't get his opportunities. It's just something that you can't bank on. So that's why I think taking him in the turn of the second is pretty high there.
Yeah, I think the casual perception of this backfield is that Mixon is going to get early down work and goal line carries, and Gio is going to be the third down back and get passing down stuff. But you're right. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's probably more of they'll both get a little bit of goal line work. They'll both get some passing down work. They'll both get some runs in between the tackles. It's just a matter of what that split is. I mean, if you look at the other running backs going around that area, which I'm just pulling up right now, if you'll give me one moment, just so we can really put this into perspective. So Mixon
it's almost
is
all
going,
dried up, basically. It's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Mixon's probably the last guy you could be a little comfortable with, but it's still one of the bigger risks you can take, like in the earlier rounds, for sure.
yeah, right after Jerick McKinnon, right before Jordan Howard, LaShawn McCoy, Darius Geist, Derrick Henry, Alex Collins. So yeah, it's those names I mentioned afterwards, all of those definitely have their own concerns. I think that's probably, and you and I have talked about this, I think that's probably an area where I'm going to be looking receiver a little bit. So I may not end up with too much Mixon either, but I don't know that he's mispriced based on the guys that are in front of him and behind him.
Yeah, this actually could be a result of just running backs being pretty shallow. And so I think that's actually a good call, Walsh, because but like the thing for me is when you look at it, if you're in picks, let's say 1 through 5, there's a realistic expectation that you could possibly have two wide receivers. Let's say if you're at the 5th pick, you take like Antonio Brown, let's say Julio slides to you, and Mixon could potentially slide to you a little bit. You can be looking at that, and I just don't feel super comfortable with Mixon as like your number one running back, and that's what I feel like some people are doing.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. It's a difficult decision for sure, but it is one where I'm not. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It feels high, but it's hard for me to really argue with him at the same time. So I don't know. I guess we'll kind of leave Mixon at that. I agree with you that I like Gio where he is as sort of a guy who you can fill in on bye weeks, as a flex, as an RB2. And also a guy who, if Mixon does get an injury, you're looking at a guy who now, instead of getting maybe 40% of the work, he's probably the guy getting 60% of the work. And that puts Gio in a great position to perform above your, where you're drafting him and potentially be an every week starter at that point. Do you have anything else on the running backs?
No, I think we kind of got that. We're scared, but they're both in pretty good positions to have a good workload, but it's going to be, eating at each other. So it's a little tough.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the wide receivers. The only one being drafted right now is AJ Green, and AJ Green, like a lot of other receivers, honestly, is going really at the lowest that you're able to get him in years. He is currently going off the board as the 8th pick in the second round. That's wide receiver 8. And just for perspective, this is a guy who has been a top 12 wideout in fantasy points per game in all 7 seasons of his career. So given that information, do you like AJ where he's going? Do you think he deserves to go higher, lower? What's your opinion there?
I think he's priced appropriately, although, I'd like to like him and Julio we talked about it when we did the NFC South, just kind of disrespected. But looking at the guys around him, I think he might be, or he probably is priced appropriately. Like the guys going before him are Julio, Thomas, Allen, and Devontae Adams, and then AJ Green right after. So I think unless you view AJ Green higher than any of those guys, which it's kind of a tough call because they're like all the elite guys going in the second round, which is wild. And I think you could see a variation of any order of those guys in the second round, kind of like you'll see that in the running backs in the first round. It's very preference based, and him going this late is a gift, basically.
Yeah, you're ending up with a guy who, is as close as a guarantee as you can get to be a wide receiver one for you, barring injury. He's going to eat up targets in this offense. He's going to get looks in the red zone. He's going to get looks downfield. We know what AJ Green is. And I think the offensive line potentially being a little bit better. I think the guys around AJ Green, the other wide receivers, potentially being a little bit better. I think all of that bodes well for him. Last year, he was an inefficient target monster, sort of. And I expect him to be much more efficient this year. Just to illustrate that a little bit better, he had 143 targets, but he had a career worst catch rate in 2017. It was 52.4%. His career average is 58.5%. And that's really just because there was nothing else on this Bengals offense that was really working. There was no one else in the passing game to really go to. So with a couple other options that we will talk about, potentially, improving and the offensive line improving, I like AJ Green to increase his efficiency from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. Only had 75 catches, like you said, and that should just go up or, be even better. It's going to be fine, I think. And if John Ross is anything like we expect him to be when he was drafted, that just opens up the entire offense. And then it's like there's a lot of pieces that need to fall in together. You need a healthy John Ross. You need a healthy Tyler Eifert. And you need Brandon LaFell to get phased out and Tyler Boyd to become sort of a solid number two. So, which I think will happen. I think Tyler Boyd will see the field more. And I think we're going to start getting into more of three wide receiver sets with AJ, Boyd, and Ross. And that's just freaky to me. I like that a lot. And then you could possibly have Tyler Eifert running around out there who all the ambiguous talk out of camp is he's looking wonderful and feeling great. So there's nothing that could possibly go wrong with that at all. And yeah, I expect them to be much better, like you said.
Let's go back to those wide receivers real quick. So the three of them, LaFell, Boyd, and Ross, none of them are getting drafted. Do you kind of made your thoughts clear that you want LaFell to be phased out for Ross to really get on the field, be that deep threat, the guy who opens up the lid on the offense, and then Boyd to kind of play in the slot. I'm kind of okay with taking a flyer on John Ross at the end of drafts. He's basically, he is free. He's being undrafted. So like, if you're going to say your last position player or even like a 12th or 13th round, you want to take a flyer on John Ross. Like, I think that's completely fine. What do you think about that?
No, that's a great call. And I think in like the first 3 to 5 weeks, 5 being the extreme, I think we'll know pretty quickly if John Ross is going to be a big part or focal point of the offense or not. He could easily be like Tavon Austin ineffective as what we saw last year in his like very, very, very small sample size. But if he's healthy and a go, that could be a complete steal, especially for not paying anything for him. So I'm with you on that. It's just, I guess it depends how your draft shakes out. And if you want to take him as the last pick, that's totally fine.
Yeah, cool. You talked about Eifert, how the reports are that he's feeling great and whatever else. There was a report today that he's not expected to start camp with them or to be full go for camp with them, and they don't really have a definite timeline. So we're kind of back to where we were with Tyler Eifert, where it's unclear when he's going to play. He's missed more games than he's played in during his career, and the team is being pretty vague about it. He's currently still being drafted, or at least when I made these notes, he was as tight end 14, the 5th pick in the 13th round. Is he worth drafting for you, or do we just need to wait for more information?
So this draft, like this ADP, I don't think is going to stick like whatsoever, especially once the Bengals start camp and the preseason starts as well, because you're going to have way more insight to what Eifert's doing. Hopefully, I hope they stop being so ambiguous with this, but where he's going right now, I have zero problem with that. I hate tight end as it is. So why wouldn't you take a guy who can be a top 5 tight end potentially if he has a healthy season going in the mid 13th? That's totally fine with me.
Okay. And then say we know Tyler Eifert is out, at least to start the season. Does Tyler Kroft become an intriguing guy for you? We mentioned we think the offense is going to open up a little bit if John Ross can take the lid off the offense, take the attention of some of those safeties. Does that make Tyler Kroft a little bit interesting? And we know he can work in the red zone too. He had 12 red zone targets last year that got turned into 7 touchdowns. So is he an intriguing guy in the late rounds for you, or maybe even as a streamer? Where does he fit there?
So the offense was so poor last year. I think the emergence of Tyler Kroft might have been a fluke. They also rotated in Ryan Hewitt, who is like a fullback kind of tight end replacement guy that they use down at the goal line as well. So yeah, I think if Eifert's out for like a long period of time again, Kroft is certainly streamable. I don't know about draftable or any kind of breakout season, but he's certainly a guy that's there.
Sometimes that's all you really need at tight end.
That's what I was going to say. He did that last year, and he was the guy that was there. And I think potentially he could be a stream-worthy dude. But I don't have lofty expectations for Tyler Kroft at all.
Slogan for Tyler Kroft is Tyler Kroft. That guy's there.
Yeah. 6 yards, 1 catch, touchdown. Perfect tight end fantasy day.
Yeah. Sweet. So that's the Bengals. I don't think there's really too much else on them. I think I'm going to bet they're over for the second year in a row. Last year, I actually bet them like long odds to win the Super Bowl, and then like they came out to that horrendous start. I was just like, oh no,
my money is gone.
Yeah,
dude, do you want to know their Super Bowl odds now?
What are they?
Dude, they are the worst in the league currently.
Are they really?
Dude, I was embarrassed because I went to the Monmouth track and now they have sports betting live. And I was like, sweet, what are the Bengals? I'll put some money on that. And it was 125-1. They are the worst
I'd put
team.
$10 on that. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah, I'm going to put 100 on it just so I can win just so I can win $12K when they win the Super Bowl.
I like that, dude. It's honestly like I think they underperformed a lot because of injuries in the offensive line last year. Fucking Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. Like, it's,
I know. It's ridiculous. And also I'm going to bet they're over on their games too. It's 6.5.
No, that's an easy over for me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like I'll probably put 100 on that one. I'm more confident in that. But
yeah. Just seeing the Browns with better odds, I was like, well, shit is changing.
Yeah, Jesus. Well, that's probably just trying to take advantage of the trend, a trendy public pick or a sexy public pick. But anyway, we'll get off the betting markets for right now, and we'll take a quick break. We'll hear from Auction Draft, and we'll be right back with the Steelers.
Auction Draft is the ultimate fantasy football auction draft experience. With full season and 5-week seasons available, you get the best of both worlds. It's time to play fantasy football the way it was meant to be played. Visit auctiondraft.net to learn more and save 50% off the 2018 season price with promo code LTFF. We'll see you on the field.
All right, guys, that was Auction Draft. Again, make sure you're checking them out. Use that promo code LTFF. Vinny, let's get right into the Steelers and start, I guess, with Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. Currently quarterback 14. That is the 11th pick in the 10th round. I think he's priced appropriately. I don't know. I don't have too much else to say on Roethlisberger, really.
I'm with you. It was kind of the same last year, or I think people overdrafted him last year. I think it might have overcorrected itself too much. I don't know. QB 14 seems low, but we wouldn't go higher. I don't think so. Also with Todd Haley leaving, I'm a little concerned. I don't know if the pieces around him will be enough. And, Ben's always been good, but I don't know how super efficient. Besides the 5-pick game last year, Ben Roethlisberger was pretty good for you, especially in the later half.
Yeah. No, we know he's good. we know he can just like, and the Steelers in general will just have these like dud games, or like, it's always seems to be in like what is on paper the best matchup of the year. Like they'll come out, Ben will throw 4 picks and like they'll put up 7 points during the game or something like that. But in general, he's at a good price. He's not consistent game to game. We know that, but he's also one of the few quarterbacks who, if any given week he puts up 40 fantasy points, you'll be like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. He's got a way higher ceiling than a lot of the quarterbacks that go in front of him, which is always something to keep in mind. Moving on to running back, we've got obviously Le'Veon Bell, 3rd pick in the 1st round right now, running back 2. He's not likely to come to camp, but he will likely report for the first game. I don't know. What do you think about him? Is he running back 1, 2, or 3 for you? Because I don't think he really goes past that for anyone.
No, he's still 1 off the board for me. I truly believe Le'Veon Bell is the best fantasy player that you can possibly grab early. It just sucks at the contract situation. Or I guess it could be good for you if you draft, after the first pick, because they might not want to take him there, especially if he's threatening to miss time. And it's a little sketchy now because Todd Gurley got that huge deal today, which solidifies the running back market. And now it's too late to give Bell a deal. So obviously he didn't get his deal. He's not going to have one. So hopefully he just sucks it up and plays this year. It's just, how hard is this guy going to go if he needs to save his body for contract negotiations next year or what? But I still think he's number 1 off the board talent wise, and you cannot pass him up.
Okay, that's fair. For me, I think he's number 2 behind Gurley, but you're splitting hairs. I mentioned this on the last set of podcasts that we did, that my ideal strategy is get the 3rd pick and take who's left out of him, Le'Veon and David, or him, Gurley and David Johnson. So I mean, like he's clearly an elite player. I really feel bad for him on a personal level too.
I do. Yeah.
With the contract thing, it's like if I were him, like they've given this guy 350 touches plus a year for the past couple of years. It's like, pay this motherfucker. He knows running back careers aren't that long. He needs to cash in while he's still healthy, because like in a couple of years, no one's going to give him any guaranteed money, and Pittsburgh's just not doing it. It's really, I mean, I get it, but like, pay the guy. He deserves it. He's so good.
Yeah. On the personal level, I'm like, that dude deserves it more than anyone in the league. And then the Bengal fan is just like, get him out of the division now.
Yeah. In terms of fantasy perspective, it's worth noting he did have a slow start week 1 last year after holding out. But he's such a huge part of that offense that I don't think it matters that much. And any running back who's a lock for 100 targets at Le'Veon Bell's talent level, it's just, insane. So behind him, we've got a trio of James Conner, Fitzgerald Toussaint, and Stephen Ridley. Conner was the guy who got hyped last year, but Toussaint was really the backup when it came down to it. Though Conner has reportedly impressed in training camp, I don't know. None of them are getting drafted. If Bell misses time, obviously some sort of combination of them will have fantasy value. My guess would be Conner would be the most valuable, and then Toussaint would be the next, and those two would have some sort of split in carries and touches. But do you have any interest in any of them?
No, definitely not. Unless Bell is like, I'm out for the year, I'm not playing. Then they become more interesting. But still, Le'Veon Bell leaves, you need 2 to 3 guys to replace his productivity. So I'm going to stay away from that.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on to wide receiver. We've got Antonio Brown, 5th pick in the 1st round. That's wide receiver 1. You and I and Don had all kind of mentioned how we think DeAndre Hopkins might be our number 1 receiver this year, but you really can't go wrong, I think, with either of them. Brown had 163 targets in only 14 games last year. In this offense, which is generally pretty efficient, he's clearly wide receiver 1 or 2 in the league.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better.
Do you have any thoughts in taking him over those 3 running backs and then Zeke, who's going 4th off the board right now, or are you pretty set on him at 5?
With the way that wide receiver is so rich in the 2nd round, I have no problem passing up AB for any of those 4 guys.
That's sort of how I'm looking at it too. Running back at the top of the draft, you can get these guys who are true bell cows. Whereas, you're not going to get the exact production that Antonio Brown gives you, but AJ Green going 7 wide receivers later and a full, round and a quarter later, kind of replicates that production a decent amount. Whereas, at that same point, you're looking at Joe Mixon or Jerick McKinnon as your guys who you're trying to replicate your Le'Veon Bell production. So, I'm right there with you. I think it's about positional scarcity, and I think you can't really pass up those bell cow running backs at that point. So Juju Smith-Schuster, he is the number 2 wide receiver on this team after they traded Martavis Bryant to the Raiders. Juju was great last year. He's currently going the 6th pick in the 4th round, wide receiver 19. Do you like him there? And then what do you project for him this year?
Dude, I have a hard time reading what he's going to do. Obviously, Martavis leaves, but he wasn't that involved. So I don't know why people are like pumped up on that kind of absence. Like there's not much that needs to be replaced, but I guess at some point he's getting a little bit more of a target bump. But Juju was great, highly effective, only had 58 catches, almost went over 1,000 yards. Pretty productive in the touchdown department with 7. So there's a lot to love. I think there's a lot of hype around how cool he is personality-wise. So I think he'll go way higher than he should. And I think people might be a little disappointed in what actually happens. I think he's being slightly overdrafted, but obviously in like a very elite offense, there's a lot of touchdowns to go around. There's a lot of targets to go around. And I think it's 1, 2, 3 with Bell, Brown, and Juju, because I don't think anyone else is really competing for that third role in the offense.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I'm definitely partial a bit to Juju just because he was a huge part of me winning a championship last year. So I do think
after that Lions game just took, what do you almost have 200 yards?
Yeah, dude, just like that whole like back stretch of the season, it was like Juju, it was fucking Juju, Kamara, and Alex Collins just like carrying me. I was like, this is like the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life, but hey, it worked out. I like him though. I like him where he's going. I think towards the end of last year, he really solidified his role. Over the last 7 games of the season, he averaged 7.5 targets per game. And again, this is an efficient offense. We know he's got a role in the red zone. We know he can make big plays. If you're going to tell me Juju Smith-Schuster at the end of the year is going to average 8 targets a game, I'm going to tell you he's extremely worth that draft price. I think it's completely fine. Battling, I guess, for the 3rd wide receiver role, you've got James Washington, who is a rookie out of Oklahoma State, I believe. Yeah, Oklahoma State. You've got Justin Hunter and Darius Hayward-Bay, which, like, who the fuck cares? Out of oh yeah. No, out of those 3, obviously Washington is the intriguing one. He won the 2017 Biletnikoff Award as the best or most productive wide receiver in college football. And the Steelers have been known to be able to support 3 fantasy wide receivers, or 3 fantasy, at least borderline startable fantasy wide receivers. So if Washington wins this job, are you at all interested in drafting him, or is he just a guy who you're keeping an eye on the waiver wire?
I'll keep an eye. I'm not even going to throw a flyer out there, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, there's also, obviously the caveat is like preseason, anything can happen. If he comes out, he's running with the starters and like looking insanely good, then maybe we change this opinion. But at this point, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, highly agreed. Oh, Walsh, before we move on, I want to do a little bit of a name game with Juju to see who you take otherwise. Golden Tate or Juju?
They are both right there, aren't they?
Correct.
My heart says Juju. My head says Golden Tate's probably the correct pick.
I think I'd go Tate there as well. Jarvis Landry, Juju.
Oh, Juju, no question.
Okay, interesting.
I'm low on
Landry. I guess it depends who the quarterback is, which we'll talk about in the next podcast.
Teaser, baby. You got to come back.
One more. Let's do Allen Robinson or Juju.
I think I'm going Juju there just because of the uncertainty. I think Juju's more of a sure thing, and I think Robinson has a higher ceiling.
There you have it. Walsh will not budge.
I'm 100% biased, but it is what it is. I want my championship winning Dragon Ball Z loving wide receiver on my team. But yeah, no, you are right. I think part of it is that just like
he's so fucking cool.
He's cool. He really he's got a cool name. Like there's so
a lot
many...
of that goes into his draft stock, and it sucks, but that's what it is. And he's a good player. It's just it's factored in, which is nuts.
Yeah, totally. It is 100% factored in. All right, so let's move on to tight end, where we've got Vance McDonald going off the board, tight end 17, first pick of the 14th round. Jesse James is also still there. Are you in on Vance McDonald, who managed to get 16 targets and 10 catches in the divisional round of the playoffs, or are you not about this?
Fucking no. Like, not at all. I'd honestly, if it came down to both of them, I'd rather have Jesse James as my tight end.
So I don't know if I agree with that. I think Jesse James might end up being on the field more than Vance McDonald. McDonald's definitely going to be like the guy who's in like these passing formations. He did have that big playoff game. Apparently Ben likes him. And with Martavis gone and, like all these other things, we don't really know who their third wide receiver is. It's possible McDonald is sort of out in the slot a decent amount of the time where he'll be running routes, and he's got Brown and, Juju going downfield, and you've got Bell out of the backfield. Like there are scenarios in which he's a productive tight end this year. I don't think he's the worst pick in the world there. It's the last fucking round.
Yeah, I mean, he's a free tight end in a good offense, I guess. But I just think him and Jesse James will be on the field at the same time, sharing, snaps and targets.
Jesse James touchdowns are 100% going to happen too.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It will be frustrating.
You're going to want to punch yourself in the dick every time that happens. I just like there are other tight ends I'd rather punch myself in the dick to than having Vance McDonald as my guy.
Yeah, that's yeah, I think that's fair. I don't hate drafting him. I also don't think there's any reason to really do it. So I guess that's about it on Vance McDonald. You mentioned you might like Jesse James a little bit more. He's going undrafted, but you wouldn't bother drafting him either, right?
No, that's I didn't mean like draft him instead, like in his
you
spot.
heard it here first. Go out and draft Jesse James, baby.
He's the first one in your league. Get his ADP up there.
Yeah, seriously. We are nothing if not a Jesse James podcast. No, we are everything if not a Jesse James podcast. All right, I guess that's going to do it for the Steelers. We will be back with part 2 of the AFC North again. We'll have the Browns and the Ravens, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Vinny, you got anything else for the people before we get out of here?
No, not really. Just a reminder to keep mocking. And as of now, training camps have started, and next Thursday will be the Hall of Fame game, and the preseason will begin.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
As in like the fucking, what day is that? The
fucking 8th?
The second?
The fucking, let me double check. This is great.
The second. It's
the second. Yes.
All right. So August fucking 2nd, you got the fucking Hall of Fame game. No, yeah, definitely. That's wild. I didn't even realize it was that quick. But yeah, we're right back to it, guys. So once we finish up these division previews, we'll be getting you through all the draft prep that you really need. But again, keep an eye out for the second part of this podcast and all our other podcasts coming up. For Vinny, I am Walsh. Later, podcast.
This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.